listen to it that way. I don't know.
I
All
can
right,
hear you.
everyone. We are trying this again. This is Misty Williams here with Dr. Jay Davidson for an Ask Me Anything in the Healing Rosie Facebook group. I'm super excited for this conversation. Thanks for all your patience with technology. It's crazy.
Take two.
Take two. That's right. This is actually probably 3 or 4 behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, you know.
Well, I've got a very long list here of questions. This was one of the most popular talks that we did. I don't know, Jay, if you had a chance to actually go look at all the comments that were left on our interview, but
I did
the
not.
community loved it. It was fantastic. We've got lots and lots of questions. And so I think what I want to do to be most productive with this time is just start volleying them up for you.
Okay.
If you guys have additional questions for Dr. J, if you want to leave them in the comments, I would be very happy if we have time to go back and ask those questions. I think I have at least 10 questions already. Just so that you know, people have been sending me questions. When I mentioned that we were doing this, I started getting questions by private message and questions on the thread. So we've got lots. So drop them in. And Dr. J, do you have a hard stop for us so that I can be respectful of your time?
No, not technically. So if you want to just start firing
so
away.
We'll kind of go. We'll try not to get too crazy here, but let's just jump in. So I want to start with the question that we got from Lisa. She said, Dr. J had mentioned malabsorption and digestive stress shows up on our face with heavy lines around the mouth, which I have. What does he recommend for me and others who have malabsorption issues? What steps are needed to improve malnutrition and remedy this issue?
First step always is making sure that the bowels are moving and the liver bile duct gets supported. But the main issue typically is parasites. Parasites really wreak havoc within the intestinal tract. And then the other thing is toxicity too. We do know that glyphosate will damage and cause larger intestinal permeability or leaky gut. So toxins are a big piece, but usually it's parasites. So when you start seeing the lines along the face here, that's typically the malabsorption signs. If you start seeing lines up in here, that's usually liver stress. Unless somebody's very like an angry person, they technically can get that. If you get a vertical,
furrowing the brow.
Yes, yeah, vertical lines. I mean, there's so many different characteristics, but typically the biggest issue in the intestinal tract of why like the absorption issues will happen is parasites. And that's most common too when you see, especially kids where they're like, they can never eat enough. You know, they just keep eating, and they're rail thin. You know, they're like the tall, thin, usually like the boys or whatever, where they just keep eating. And that's always a sign that the parasites are stealing your nutrients. So you're eating enough food, however, you're just not getting the nutrients. So I would parasite cleanse. That would be my top pick.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me ask you about that because we had lots of chatter this week, over the last week, in the Facebook group about parasites. A lot of people really resonated with the idea of parasites. So there were women who feel like that's the thing I need to do next is do a parasite cleanse. I got lots of questions about this, but I think that in order for these questions to be really relevant, let's give some context. So 4 different kinds of internal stressors that you like to address in your protocol: parasites, chronic infection, mold, and metals. Those are the 4 areas that you said most often you have to do some really deep work with women. So parasites is one of them. So I have a couple of questions about this just to make sure that we're all contextually applying this well. Number 1, with parasites, is this something that you recommend as far as doing the parasite cleansing, that you recommend people start right away going after the parasites? Are there some foundational things that need to be in place first? Is there a way that you sequence parasite cleansing? Give us some context so that we implement your suggestions properly.
So the first thing is making sure the drainage pathways are open, which basically just means make sure you're pooping. You gotta go at least once a day. But when you start moving into the parasite cleansing, when you start moving into detoxing, when you start clearing toxins and pathogens out, I would always err on the side of going 2 to 3 times a day. Now, not watery diarrhea, but we want to make sure that pathway is moving more than less. So supporting drainage. I'm biased with being the co-founder of microbe formulas, but intestinal mover is a really easy thing that stimulates peristalsis. I'm a huge fan of coffee enemas, really helping that liver bile duct opening and creating movement in there. There's a ton of herbs though. I mean, we've got a kidney liver detox product as well. Those are the two main things to support is the colon and the liver bile duct and kidneys. And then you can pretty much jump right into parasites. Parasites have to be done first because everything is essentially hidden or stored within parasites. So if you jump over parasites and try to kill Lyme or try to clear mold or try to detox, you hit a wall because those are basically within the parasites.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So let's go into some of these parasite questions. So the Mimosa pudica that you talked about, obviously you have your own brand. Someone from Canada was trying to find this product. They were using Amazon.ca. This is Colleen. And she said that she couldn't find it in Canada on Amazon. Have you encountered this before? And do you have recommendations for helping people source Mimosa pudica?
Yeah, so our product is on Amazon. However, there was the labeling that we had on was not what they liked. They liked an expiration date not a manufactured on date. So they've requested to not have the product on until we do a expiration date, which we want to do testing to know, to actually put the date on there. So I believe Mimosa pudica seed is not on Amazon at this moment. However, microbeformulas.com, we ship worldwide. So we ship to Canada and all that. Okay.
Fantastic. So microbeformulas.com, you guys can go there and find this supplement. All right. Can Mimosa pudica kill liver flukes? I've been told you have to use antibiotics for flukes.
No, you don't need antibiotics for it. However, there are a lot of other anti-parasitic herbs. There's all kinds of great tools out there. Mimosa pudica is really a base for any protocol. It's not a standalone. So I'd always recommend throwing some other herbs in there like neem, clove, vadanga, holorina, triphala. We've got wormwood, black walnut, right? There's all kinds of different ones in there. Specifically though, for the flukes in the liver, blue tansy or tansy is a really good product. So Mimosa pudica will absolutely help. However, when you're looking at parasite cleansing, I wouldn't just rely on Mimosa pudica seed all by itself. I would always recruit other things on the mix and rotate it up too.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to your products, do you have a couple of products that you pair together typically that you recommend people use together? Is there some kind of sequence dosing?
Yeah, so Mimosa pudica seed, and that's the name of the product, so that makes it easy. And then we have another one called Formula One, and that is our other immune support, anti-parasitic. So you can take those actually together at the same time. And you can take Formula One for 90 days straight. So that one's actually, you can take a little bit longer as well too. Mimosa pudica though, you never have to really cycle that on or off. You can stay on it. And then you can always rotate between other things. So you can get some, wormwood or liposomal artemisian or black walnut, between the Formula One. We've got a Formula 2 coming out. It's not out quite yet. That one's going to be really good for the flukes, especially, and strongyloides. I don't have an ETA quite yet on it, but it should hopefully be out sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Sooner meaning in the next month or two, or sooner in the next 6 months to a year, just to manage expectations.
Probably 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, we're really
next few months.
Yeah, really pushing hard on the manufacturers. Some tweaks we're making on the formula, and then we always like to retest and stuff like that. So,
sure. Okay. Someone just commented, I have multiple movements a day. However, I have slow motility in my colon. Other than coffee enemas, any recommendations for fully emptying each time? I also don't have a gallbladder, but do take enzymes.
Yeah, so just make sure to take some either ox bile or tudka with your meals because you need some extra bile not having a gallbladder. And then use a squatty potty or just a stool when you go to the bathroom. So get the knees, up to get into a squatting position. You'll empty out a lot easier. And then physical massage of the abdomen. Intestinal mover, again, I'm biased on that, but that is phenomenal. Those are probably the top tools. And then make sure you're hydrated too. Dehydration will slow the colon down as well.
Awesome. Alrighty. I'm a huge fan of the squatty potty, by the way, and I've converted everyone in my family and most of my friends.
It's amazing.
On the squatty. I mean, it's something so simple. I remember bringing it home to my parents, because I live in Austin, and I go home to Oklahoma City where my family lives often. I have nieces and nephews up there, and I love being auntie and love spending time with my family. So I'll go up there for a week or two at a time. And it's like, I cannot be in this house for several weeks and not have a squatty potty. So I bought one for my parents, and my brothers and sisters gave me so much grief, except now they all have squatty potties. Because once you experience it, gosh, it makes for a much better elimination. So 3 cheers for the squatty potty.
Yes. And if you don't want to go buy a squatty potty, you can just use a stool. You don't have to get too complex. So
I'm traveling right now. I'm in California, and I actually just ordered a portable squatty potty that will be delivered today to my hotel room.
That's awesome.
Because it's been like a week, and I've got like another week to go, and I can't do this. I can't. All right. Next question is from Trina. I'm curious what Dr. Jay thinks about diatomaceous earth for parasite cleansing.
Great tool. The only thing is, do not mix it with mimosa pudica seed at the same time. So one of the earlier renditions that Dr. Todd Watts was doing is, as a filler, he used diatomaceous earth with mimosa pudica seed. And what we realized was that it made the stickiness of mimosa pudica seed not as effective. So I always take it 2 hours away, but diatomaceous earth is very cheap. You can get food grade, right on Amazon. I mean, literally for pennies for a dose. So it's a great tool as well.
Do you recommend people just take that as a powder, like mixing it in water? Or do you want them to capsule it? Like, how would you do the diatomaceous earth?
Oh, I just have, a little bit of water and stir it up. You can also, if you do smoothies or shakes or anything, you can just throw it in there as well.
Perfect. Alrighty. Next question's from Kaylee. I'd love to hear him compare and contrast neem and mimosa pudica, which I'm getting the pronunciation right. Just keep saying it, Dr. J, and I'll eventually get it. You just mentioned those as possibly complementary. So I don't know if there's a compare contrast, but why don't you give us some education on how those two things live together?
So mimosa pudica is really a gut grabber, gut scrubber. It's a great foundational support for the digestive tract, for candida, for biofilm, for parasites, for all kinds of stuff. Neem is more of in the stronger herb type category as being the antimicrobial, anti-pathogen, anti-viral, anti-parasitic. So it's just another tool in the toolbox. There's a lot of great herbs out there, especially in the Ayurvedic side or Ayurveda for parasites. And neem is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Trez asks, how do you do a coffee enema if you're allergic to coffee?
I haven't heard of people allergic to coffee. Now, you could react to drinking coffee if you have liver issues. I haven't seen that with anybody before, but it's always possible. I mean, you can be allergic to any thing, even if it's good for you, right? Like kale and spinach and all that. So if you're allergic or super sensitive and your body's very reactive to it, just stay away from it. There is a big difference, though, of drinking coffee versus actually putting it up the rectum, and the body processes it different. And there's another thing just to consider too, and no way am I saying, oh, well, just push through and try it out, because if you are sensitive or allergic to it, stay away from it. However, I've also seen where people say, oh, I'm allergic to wormwood, but I really believe it's the parasites that as soon as you take it, they start reacting. And then you feel like you're reacting to the wormwood, but it's actually the critters inside that are upset. So there is a difference between, is it actually your body reacting, or is it the things inside that don't want you to be taking it? So just some more food for thought.
Alrighty. Just got a comment from Facebook that says, GI map showed that I have whipworm. I completed a protocol with wormwood and other herbs at the end of August, but still have symptoms, a very itchy bottom. I grew up in India, so my GI tract has suffered a lot over the years. How long should I stay on the mimosa pudica and Formula 1? Also, my beloved cat sleeps with me. She's 12 pounds, so how do I dose her? And that must be from Vanita, because I had an over here that was going to be the next one. Great timing.
Yeah, so never sleep with your animals in bed for sure, because it's going to be really hard to clear parasites out, because you're just going to pass it back and forth to each other, mainly the animals. I don't have a lot of experience with cats. I know dogs, because you can give diatomaceous earth, for instance, to dogs. You can give it to cats too. So like a 12-pound cat, that seems to be a little bit bigger cat, but a teaspoon is typical dosing. You can look it up online. It's either a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon for a cat, around 12 pounds. Mimosa pudica is fine. There's really not a max or a minimum that you need to give. The tricky thing is, how do you give it? Because it is sticky. So, mixing it in food, cats can sometimes be a little pickier from what I understand as well. So if you can mix it in with some type of food, maybe that's where you go with a wet food, right? And just mix it in real quick and let the cat eat it. If it's on dry food, I'm not sure, the best route of how you would get that in. But I would highly recommend never to sleep with your animals for sure, because things crawl out of them while they're sleeping and they'll crawl into you. Usually when the butt is itchy, it's pinworms. So you want to look into pinworms, and sometimes recruiting pyrantel palmoate, which is an over-the-counter, pretty inexpensive. You can get it on Amazon for maybe 15 to 20 bucks for like a 8 to 16 ounce. It is a medication. It's probably the only one I really actually would recommend sometimes for parasites, but pyrantel palmoate's really good for pinworms, and that's what causes the itchy butt. So when you go to bed, the pinworms come out of the anus, lay the eggs around the anus, and then that's why you itch. And when you itch, they get on your fingers, and then their goal is to get back into your mouth, nasal cavity, to get back in your GI tract. So it's kind of gross to think about, but that's why it's good to always keep pets separate from your bed, personally.
Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that even if they're in the house, if you have animals in the house, is this something that's going to be kind of like an ongoing loop? Is this why there might be a case for treating your animals if you're treating yourself for parasites?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I recommend who's ever because it's usually somebody that's having health issues in the family, do them first, because sometimes parasites can take a year to clear out. Sometimes it's 90 days, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes it's even longer. So I always like to tell who's ever struggling the most, just start. And then as you get a few months in, then that's when you can get all the other family members into parasite cleansing. Then you can also go after the animals. So yeah, giving your animals, just occasionally some diatomaceous earth. We have some people I know that give it to them every day because they're, kind of freaked out. Giving them antiparasitics. There is some over-the-counter meds for dogs. Quad dewormer is one. And then it's a yellow container, or it's a yellow box. If I think of it, I'll mention it. But so there's some over-the-counter little tablets too that you can give dogs occasionally. It's good, just even if you just do one around a full moon. Obviously, with you can mix in mimosa pudica, you can mix in diatomaceous earth. With any other herbs, though, you want to look up just to make sure that they are pet friendly, especially the stronger ones, or some of the more herbs that can have interactions. You just want to always double check that.
So you mentioned, I remember in our initial talk, you talked about the whole full moon thing, and maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis, just kind of doing a round of treatment. Do you want to get a little bit more specific about that? So if someone has a legit parasite issue, this is a protocol they should follow for 6 months to a year. Am I getting that suggestion from what you're saying?
Yeah. So on microbeformulas.com, we have Dr. Todd and I put together a protocol guide just to try to help. So if anybody's looking for more assistance, I think that would be a good resource. But in general, what I find is that most people haven't parasite cleansed, and it's built up in them, which means that the levels can be pretty high. So it can take a while to bring it down. The goal is not to kill every single thing that's living in your body, and because you won't, right? We have a lot
and there's an ecosystem in there.
Yeah, there's an ecosystem. So the goal is to bring the load down, and then periodically, right, through exposure, you're going to get some, and you just want to periodically cleanse to bring it back down to keep it low. So an initial cleanse at minimum, typically I say 90 days, be persistent, be consistent. And if you don't see anything and you're like, I don't think this is a big deal, great. Then just do periodic after that, which periodic could be, I would say at minimum, twice a year. So every 6 months. And that could be 1 month straight where you hit it hard. You could also, though, I have a lot more clients that like to do it and hit it over the full moon. So every full moon for 5 days. So a couple days before the full moon, on the full moon, a couple days after the full moon, they'll hit it with multiple antiparasitic herbs, higher doses, and cleanse. And if they start seeing stuff come out, then they know, okay, I got to continue and really push just a little bit more. If you don't, then you wait again for the next full moon or every other full moon. So it can vary depending on the person. The key is be persistent and consistent off the bat. Then you want to do periodic. And as you parasite cleanse, you'll notice changes, you'll feel stuff, you'll see stuff come out of you. And the key with this, really with health in general, is just to understand your body cues and clues better, to then identify, oh, I've got to do more of that. Oh, I understand that correlation. And the more we can listen to our body, the more it'll help guide us as to like, am I actually done or should I keep going? And my rule of thumb, Misty, is when you think you're done, always do at least another month just in case, because there's times where like, oh, I'm not seeing anything anymore. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, boom, you purge a huge amount of stuff out. And you're like, where'd that come from? So when in doubt, do a little longer than you think, and then just periodic. And I will tell you, it's been probably the most transformative thing I've seen in the Lyme disease world, bar none, over anything else. And I've seen some crazy changes from detoxing heavy metals, but parasites is like a whole new level.
Yeah. I do know that Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and the talk that she gave for women who are really stuck on the weight loss side, which she works with super, super challenging weight loss cases. I really liked her because she is more aggressive than probably a lot of people would feel comfortable being, which many of us aren't going to need to be that aggressive. We're going to find other ways of putting these protocols together and getting results. But I know what it's like to be that woman who was up 45 pounds. You guys have heard my story. I think you've heard it too, Dr. J. Up 45 pounds, don't know where it came from, and nothing is taking it off. And I'm beating my head against a wall. And for someone to tell me diet and exercise and love your body made me want to just like, shoot to the moon, because it's infuriating and frustrating when you think you're doing everything right and you're following the rules and nothing's working. So I love Gabrielle, because she is willing to step outside the box, and her philosophy, which really resonates with my own experience, is we've got to move the needle, because nothing is as unhealthy as carrying around really excessive weight. And I'm not talking about an extra 10 or 20 pounds. I'm talking about women that are carrying 50, 100 plus pounds of weight that they can't get off. That's so unhealthy for our body. So she's very controversial in what she recommends. I liked that. I want women to know what the options are, but she talked about parasites quite a bit, and she sees amazing results with women around parasites. And she actually looks at the tongue. I don't know if that's one of the things that you like to do, but she looks at the tongue like as an acupuncture thing, I guess, and she can kind of see if there's a parasite issue. And she's a huge fan of parasite cleansing. So I know from a couple of different perspectives, we're getting some good airtime on this subject.
Yeah. The more, you'll be hearing more and more about it in the functional medicine world. I mean, it's something that was done traditionally a lot back in the day, and then just for whatever reason kind of got lost in the mix, lost in the weeds, and this kind of assumption that, oh, I'm in the first world country, there's not parasite issues, has unfortunately really made the issue worse. So
sure. All right. If you guys have questions for Dr. J, feel free to add it to the comments. I've got a pretty good stack of questions, and I'm just going to keep working our way down here. So got another question here that says, I'd like to do bioactive carbons, but will this interfere with my thyroid medication and or other supplements?
So the bioactive carbons are different than just traditional like clay or charcoal. And if you take it with a medication, it won't bind the medication. It'll actually make it more usable and higher like strength. So that's really the concern with it. So never mix supplements, any kind of supplement, with a medication at least 2 hours away. That's my conservative number. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about thyroid hormone and they'll say 4 hours away. So, I mean, if you really wanted to be ultra conservative, let's say you woke up at 6 a.m., you took your thyroid meds, then you're waiting until 10 a.m. for any supplements. But typically most people just wait 2 hours and are fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How and when should I take it? The bioactive carbon, so it's not grabbing the medication. You just dealt with that. All right, that's good. We handled that one. All right.
Yeah, and maybe just another quick mention on that. So bioactive carbon, you can take it with or without food, and you can take it with other supplements as well. Just don't mix it with medication. The one supplement, though, to stay away from is mimosa pudica seed. Just keep that an hour away. But otherwise, any other supplement is fine. You can take it with or without food. So it becomes really flexible, a lot easier than kind of, like I said, the traditional charcoal or clay.
Okay, awesome. All right. Jewel asks, how am I supposed to deal with the fillings? She talked about mercury fillings. When I still have a few left on one side of my mouth, do I take them out before or after a detox or during it? We actually just had this conversation with Peter where we talked a little bit about mercury fillings. And for those of you that don't know, or if you missed me mentioning this in other interviews, my mysterious 45-pound weight gain was from my mercury fillings being removed improperly, which I just connected the dots on that, by the way, this summer when I was recording these interviews. It's always a mystery, like, where did that come from? And then I started doing the math and looking back at my records and was like, oh my God, that was heavy metals. That's what did it for me so my mouth wasn't dammed properly. So this is a big topic in the community. I think there's a lot of interest in, wanting to get the fillings removed if there's issues around heavy metals. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your perspective? Do people get them removed? How do they know if they should get it removed, and when in their treatment would you encourage people to get it removed?
Yeah, it's you got to get them out. I had a client, I met with her for an initial. She had 26 amalgam fillings, and I told her, I'm like, I can't work with you unless you're going to get those out. And she's like, it's my whole mouth. And so she didn't move forward. And in that case, and she was in her early 50s, I was like, well, you can get, you don't have to go through the crazy process. You can just get your teeth pulled and get dentures, which, being a beautician, she was like, no way ever I could do that. And then unfortunately, like 9 months later, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And then 9 months later, she had passed away. And it was at that time, it was like, just so confirming that whether we want to hear it or not, whether it's convenient or not, like there's just things that need to be done. And mercury in your mouth is a source of heavy metals. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to detox mercury, can you detox mercury with the bioactive carbons? Yeah, it's safe. You're going to pull it out. It's better to do that than, just have the mercury in your mouth and not detox. But ideally, if the goal is to detox mercury, then you can't have a source in your mouth. So absolutely, I would recommend to get your amalgams removed by a biological dentist that can protect you, and make sure you're not just in a crash state. That's the key. Make sure that you have a little life, a little energy within you, that you're not like bedbound or, housebound, that you're in such a sensitive state. Because it is a stressful, it is a procedure, and there's going to be, even at a biological dentist, there's going to be some exposure. However, it's vastly much safer than at a, conventional dentist, which sounds like you kind of went to, Misty, the drill and fill type. So
yeah, they were drilled out, and obviously it wasn't damaged, so it went down into my thyroid and up to my brain. And yeah, people are probably getting sick of hearing me talk about it, but it's a real thing. And I have had a lot of questions too. Michelle Norris, her interview, she's co-founder of PaleoFX. Her interview was on Sunday. She talked about her experience just getting well. And she and I actually have, unique N equals ones. We have different things going on with us, but we've had similar journeys to actually getting better. I mean, we've really learned to advocate and seeing big progress. And that's one thing that I really want for women, is not just to hear Dr. Jay and other doctors talk about what this looks like, but I want you to see and hear from women who are actually doing it, so that you can see their patterns and what's working. So Michelle's interview was really fantastic. And she went to a biological dentist in Tijuana, Mexico. There's a lot of people, I don't know, Dr. J, if you recommend your clients go down there, but I know that I've spoken
American
with
Biodental.
That's it. Dr. Pompa sends his clients down there too. The difference in cost, her mouth was quoted for around $25,000 to get all the stuff done in her mouth that she needed. Her travel expenses, hotel, all the work on her mouth, plus Keith, her husband, went with her, and he had ozone therapy and a couple other things done. All of it was like $3,500, just to contrast the cost. Yep. Because I know that's a big, big reason why we feel like we can't do all this stuff in our mouth, is because it's so expensive. And it is, if you get it done here in the States, it is so expensive to go to a biological dentist. And of course, insurance doesn't cover it. I do have a bonus talk that is available for everybody that signed up from Dr. Al Dannenberg, who's a periodontist. And we talk a lot about oral health, tie it to gut health. This is a really, really important area. And I don't know, Dr. J, if you have even anything that you want to add to this, but making sure that you're not doing all this work and ignoring your mouth. is huge, huge, huge. And there are resources that help you address what's going on in your mouth without it completely breaking the bank. I mean, most people can figure out, put a plan together over 6 months or so and figure out how to go get your mouth taken care of for, less than $5,000. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, my sister went to American Biodental. My sister-in-law went there. So yeah, I send family there as well.
Yeah, it's a great one. Okay. Let's go on to the next question. Oh, and just to highlight, she says, do I take them out before or after the detox or during it? The important thing is that you're not in a completely crashed state. Am I getting that right, Dr. J? Like we need to make sure that our bodies can actually handle the procedure.
Right. So focus on drainage, clear parasites out, get the amalgams out, and then focus on detoxing.
Okay. Awesome. Sarah asks, forgive me if this is off topic, but I recently read that fasting, if you have adrenal fatigue, is not a good idea. So I'm wondering, is it safe to fast for blood tests if you suspect adrenal fatigue? To clarify, I don't mean fasting for an adrenal test, but fasting for General Women's Health Blood Panel, which includes some tests that require fasting. And I actually have another follow-up about fasting and I want to ask, but why don't we address Sarah's question first?
Yeah, well, if the labs require fasting, you don't really have a choice. When you fast and you have adrenal fatigue or, technically adrenal insufficiency, just don't push it. Plan to lay low, and the harder you push it, the worse your symptoms are going to be. So it's kind of up to, each person individually, but typically with the adrenals, I mean, you can take adrenal support, but if you fast and you're struggling, if you've got to do it for blood work or test, then you just have to do it. Just plan on laying low and just, don't have a busy, work day or busy time when you're fasting.
Mm-hmm. So intermittent fasting is a hot topic. I know that Dr. David Jockers is doing a summit in January on intermittent fasting. The men in our community swear by intermittent fasting. Women have mixed results with intermittent fasting, it seems. Some women claim that they've done the intermittent fasting thing and it's absolutely crushed their system. Do you have a perspective on the whole intermittent fasting conversation, especially for women who are in these chronically diseased states? What are you seeing?
Yeah, some people can handle it, some can't. My good friend, Dr. Todd Watts, he can look at blood work and kind of predict whether you're going to make it or not make it. But in general, typically what you got to do is cleanse parasites. Parasites affect the liver and they affect the pancreas. There's pancreatic flukes, there's liver flukes, there's things that are all up in, those organs. And when we're looking at blood sugar, because it's really blood sugar issues typically with fasting that, where people are like, oh my gosh, I got to eat, I don't have any energy. I feel like I'm going to crash. The pancreas always gets mentioned because of insulin, but a bigger one is liver with glycogen. And that's a parasite thing. I mean, that was me, coming home after work at lunch, back when we had our chiropractic office. I'm like, I'm starving. I'm going to die. I need to eat, and then I just eat. And then as I've cleared parasites out, I realized like, I'm not really that hungry that often. And I don't have the cravings like I used to. And this like lightheadedness of like, oh, I just need to eat. So I know there's a big link with those critters.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There is on the intermittent fasting front, do you from a diagnostic perspective, have you used intermittent fasting clinically or have you been around a clinical context where that's been a part of the protocols and practices that you've used to support patients in improving their health?
Oh yeah. Last 6 years.
Okay. And then for women in general, when you think about using like from a protocol perspective, is there a role that is there a time in which you say someone's ready for intermittent fasting? So for those women who are hearing about all the benefits of it and want to dive into it, is there a sequencing? I guess that's really the word I'm looking for. A time when intermittent fasting is something that they should consider and a time when you're not ready.
It's a tool in the toolbox. I used to use it a lot more, but what I realized it can help in some cases. I mean, there's practitioners, that's all they do, right? Like, I'm going to teach you how to intermittent fast and we're going to force you through it. And that's it. I don't know. I get such great results and not even needing to recruit that.
Yeah.
So I'm using it less and less, but I used it so much that that was such a big part of my protocols before, of like intermittent fasting, daily intermittent fasting, block fasting, all these different types of things. But in the end, when I work with a client personally, it's most of the time their diet's pretty good. And so there's not a lot of dietary changes. So I usually focus more on protocol stuff and just, tend not to go too much into the diet stuff.
Okay. Someone said, could you please repeat the name of the over-the-counter drug for pinworms?
Pyrantel pomoate. And you can give it to animals as well.
Okay, awesome. All right, next question. Someone here is saying that they do not have a gallbladder. So how does the absence, this is from Christina, how does the absence of a gallbladder affect the detoxification process? Can you use good heavy metal detox if you don't have a gallbladder or, parasite or insert thing you're detoxing here?
Oh yeah. You wanna use all the normal detox stuff. The issue is your digestion. So you don't have a sac to store bile. So when you eat a meal, you can't get a big release. So that's where any big meal, especially with fats in it, you want to make sure you're taking either TUDCA or ox bile. Those two things are great. Otherwise, I mean, essentially, if you don't have a gallbladder, you just have leaky bile kind of into the digestive tract. But as far as any other thing with the protocol, it doesn't affect it. It's primarily just why you're eating.
Great. If and I like doesn't tell me mouth removed, chances of health issues existing 4 years after. So I'm assuming that they've had mouth issues. And they're asking, can you still have issues years later? What's coming up for me is cavitations, but you want to address that question?
You're cutting out pretty good. So something 4 years ago in the mouth was the question.
Yeah, if a person had a mouthful of teeth that were removed,
okay,
what are the chances of health issues existing 4 years later?
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm not a dentist, but when you remove teeth, you want to make sure you're actually removing the periodontal ligament. Because otherwise it's a breeding ground for bacteria, and most traditional dentists will actually leave that in there. So it depends. That's still a good reason why to go to a biological dentist. So if you've had root canals, that'll put you more at risk of cavitations. If you have teeth pulled and they leave the periodontal ligament, that could put you more at risk of, infection and cavitations as well too. So it does depend. The teeth are extremely important with your health. And I would just recommend to find a biological dentist in your area, or again, you can travel, to San Diego and drive across the border to Tijuana to American Biodental, but, get somebody in your, that you can have evaluate your mouth, make sure there's no issues, get the testing done, because it is a really important piece to your health.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Chelation question. Did I miss which chelation method removes the metals from the brain? I've heard a lot about clearing out the liver, but does that also remove the metals? I want some clarification around that. Thanks.
Yeah, so the old school chelation methods, the Dr. Andy Cutler popularized, DMSA, EDTA, DMPS, ALA, all those things, they have some pretty wicked half-lives and a little bit more challenging and, a lot of side effects. The bioactive carbon metchem, so the metchem is a chelator of heavy metals, and it goes systemic. So it's got long, medium, and short chain carbons in it. And all you got to know is the short cross the cell and they cross the blood-brain barrier. So within one capsule of metchem, you've got a whole concentration gradient within it. So it's a lot simpler process, and the half-life is 12 to 18 hours. So you just have to take it twice a day versus doing something like, every 4 hours, which again, waking up in the middle of the night for chelation is not a fun thing. I did it for 2 years, but it's great that we got better tools and safer ones.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Someone on Facebook is asking, are there other health benefits to Mimosa pudica other than parasites?
Yes. Yep. Digestive tract, candida, biofilm. It's really just a gut support. So when you look at that digestive tract, there's a couple layers of mucus. And when you're having health issues, typically those mucus layers start getting really thick. The Mosa pudica really helps to actually normalize that. So any type of digestive issues, Mimosa pudica is really that gut grabber, gut scrubber, like really foundation gut help. It gets all of its publicity though from the parasite side, but it definitely does more than just parasites.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's great. One of the things that has come up a lot in the community, and in fact, I just asked Dr. Peter Osborne in our Ask Me Anything right before this one, this same question, because we have a lot of women talking about challenges with their sleep. And this goes beyond just, I'm having trouble falling asleep at night. This is like chronic. For years, I've not been able to either get to sleep or stay asleep. Lots of people dealing with chronic insomnia, lots of people struggling with just falling asleep in general. And, we know that there's some good sleep hygiene. And, we hear a lot of talk in our space about good sleep hygiene and things that you can do to kind of, make sure you're getting exposure to sunlight every day, make sure you're doing the amber glasses and reducing your exposure to blue light after dark, darkening the windows, lowering the temperature in the room. So there's a lot of talk about good sleep hygiene, but what about for those extreme cases of people that have serious issues with sleep or insomnia? Is this something that you've seen much in your practice? And what would you say to those people? Are there protocols that you recommend? Are there strategies that you recommend, tools you recommend for those people that are really struggling to sleep?
We always got to go upstream to the source. So you're going to look at environment, mold, and electromagnetic radiation or EMFs. Those all play a big role. You never want to sleep with your phone next to you being charged. I mean, that's just kicking off EMFs, let alone the phone's on. So if you're going to sleep next to, you're going to have your phone next to you, airplane mode, not charging it. But that's where you have to get rid of Bluetooth. You have to get rid of Wi-Fi. Make sure your house is not sitting right next to a cell phone tower. Those are just concrete things for optimal sleep. So beyond that, you want to look at emotional traumas and emotional stressors. That's a huge category. And it inevitably comes back to this idea that either you believe things are happening to you or you believe things are happening for you. And the moment that you shift and realize everything's actually for me and not happening to me, life changes. And then toxins. So specifically Mercury is a really big toxicity issue for sleep. And then you want to look at chronic infection. Not only Lyme disease, but parasites. Parasites get active when you go to bed. So for those of you where all of a sudden like you feel like you get a little energy right before bed, you're like, gosh, am I a night owl? No, it's the pathogens, it's the parasites inside of you that are really stressing you out, wake you up. So anybody that's having chronic insomnia issues, it just means you haven't cleared the source or sources that are still causing those issues, whether it's, your environment, whether it's emotions, whether it's physical traumas as well too. But in the chemicals side of it, it's toxins and it's usually pathogens like parasites that play a big role. So as long as you move upstream and remove that, the body can start to normalize and start optimizing sleep. And then the adrenal circadian rhythm. So if you're just trying to take sleeping stuff like, I'm taking melatonin or liposome melatonin or valerian root or, whatever, or sleepy tea, like all that stuff at night, you want to also focus on supporting the adrenals during the day. That the energy that you have during the day is going to dictate the quality of sleep at night. So you don't want to just focus at night with just that, 8 hours. You actually want to focus the other part of the day as well and really support the adrenal side as too.
Awesome. Alrighty, got another question here from Facebook. Can Dr. J make some recommendations for me as I have malnutrition? I cannot absorb B12 injections. And I suspect I'm not able to absorb my supplements.
Yeah, so any malabsorption issues, again, you want to look at the digestive tract. You want to parasite cleanse. If you've never parasite cleansed, that's first place to start, absolutely. Otherwise, you're looking at also just inflammation, like whole body inflammatory inflammation, like throughout at the cellular level, again, which comes back to what's triggering that. So if there's malabsorption, and this is the issue we run into, right? So the two main health issues are deficiency and toxicity. The problem is in our culture, we try to shoot for the deficiency first. I'm going to pound nutrients in. You got to clear the toxicity first. You got to clear the toxicity of chemicals. You got to clear the toxicity of pathogens. And then it's all about actually filling up the nutrient or removing the deficiency side. So just remember, toxicities first, the deficiency comes last.
Awesome. And then I'm assuming that if we're not absorbing B12 injections and we suspect that we're not absorbing supplements, that there's likely just a general gut health issue going on here. Is there a correlation or that you want to draw there or not that you intentionally don't want to draw?
Well, injections are different, B12 usually doesn't get absorbed too great in the gut as well. So, usually sublingual, but then when you're injecting it, the question is what are you basing that off? Are you basing it off of blood work? Which again is not 100%. We're very test and data driven in America, but so many tests are just crap. And then when you look at B12 and they're like, oh my gosh, you're over 1,000, it's too toxic. It's like, no, you actually want to be over 1,000 to even turn on methylation. So I guess it would depend on what the lab levels are, how often you get it, but you also want to look at the type of B12. So if you're, using a really cheap kind like cyanocobalamin, as far as B12 shots, your body might not convert it. You might have MTHFR issues. You might have liver problems. It might not just be the genetics, which everybody likes to blame. It might just be liver function is poor and can't convert and can't do its thing. So I think there's many pieces to it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Another Facebook question. What are some things that I can do to help with drainage? And they've said dry brush, supplementation. Are there other things?
Yeah, list is long. I mean, there's a ton of herbs. The infrared sauna, castor oil packing, liver gallbladder flush, coffee enemas, just increasing hydration, optimizing sleep because that's when your brain drains. Incline bed therapy is something really neat to look at. So there's just a ton of tools. That's probably what most of my first two books or my two books that I have written. There's just a ton of drainage things in there. So that's probably the best resource.
Remind us the name of your books.
The first one is 5 Steps to Restoring Health Protocol. So if you just went on Amazon and type my name, the 2 books will come up. 5 Steps to Restoring Health Protocol. And then the other one is How to Fix Lyme Disease, which isn't just for Lyme disease, but clearly is a lot about Lyme.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. We had someone asking in the Facebook group that has silicone breast implants if infrared sonotherapy is okay for someone that has silicone breast implants. Do you have any insight on that?
It is. However, silicone, you're going to get heavy metals, and then you're also going to run a risk of having mold within the silicone. So longevity of how long they've been in there, how long you're planning on leaving them in there. The infrared sauna I wouldn't be worried about. It's more of just other issues with it I'd be worried about.
Yeah, we actually had Cindy Kubika on who recently had her breast implants removed and talked to us about breast implant. What is it called? Breast implant syndrome, I think they're calling it now. They had to come up with a name for it, But she had developed a lot of symptoms that Cindy and I have been friends for 15 years. That she had implants because of a terrible car accident several years ago that basically crushed this whole side of her body. But anyway, she ended up having her implants removed and a lot of her symptoms and stuff went away. So we've been talking a lot about breast implants and, pros and cons of it. And so thought this was a particularly relevant question. I know it's very personal to women, whether or not they keep them or get rid of them, but there's your answer, I suppose.
Yeah, there's great other options too, where they actually take the fat out of your belly, spin it down, inject it in your breast where it's actually your own tissue. So I think there's a lot of options out there. But yeah, it is a super sensitive, super personal issue. But also too, you have to look at the number of women that have got them in and got sick and the number of women that got them out and their life has changed for the positive. So. Right.
Okay. How do I check if my bile ducts are clogged? Are there tests, and will an ultrasound show any abnormalities?
You can run an ultrasound. If you see dilation of the liver, then you have liver flukes. But there's not really great tests for the bile. If you're seeing tan stools, it's extremely clogged and there's massive issues. Most people have bile flow issues. So I'm on the camp of let's assume you have parasites and let's assume your bile isn't flowing optimally and let's focus on improving that. As far as testing, when it's really backed up, that's where you can get jaundice. That's where you can get, some other symptoms. But that's when it's like there's extreme issues with the liver and bile duct. Most people are going to have, flowing issues that aren't going to exhibit a lot of symptoms. So, I mean, there's energetic testing. There's machines that can, energetic machines that can show like, hey, you got liver bile duct stress. But as far as, most symptoms, any GI issue at all, I would throw the bile in there because that's really what emulsifies fat and that's what neutralizes stomach acid. If you don't have your stomach acid, which most functional medicine docs will put you on something to try to increase your stomach acid, betaine HCl, drink some apple cider vinegar before a meal. You're again just treating the symptom. You're not actually getting to the root cause, which is a lack of bile flow. So any type of GI really is just a key to show you the liver bile duct needs a lot of attention to help the digestive tract.
All right. Facebook question here. If I tested positive for B. Burgdorferi bacteria, I'm probably butchering that, but no other markers on the Western blot, what are the odds one can have Lyme disease considering there aren't currently good tests for it?
Yeah, so Borrelia burgdorferi is Lyme disease. The testing out there sucks. So, and the testing that is decent, like DNA Connections out of Colorado, the Lyme urine panel, it only looks for maybe 5 or 6 co-infections with Lyme. There's all kinds of other bugs that can be there. There's all kinds of retroviruses that we're seeing is just a modern day epidemic of what keeps people sick, especially when it's stuck in their bone marrow and their nervous system. So if you are having health issues, you want to not narrow down into, oh, I've got a clear Lyme disease. You really just want to assume like, I've got to deal with pathogens and chronic infection in general. So that's why I like to really classify that category as chronic infection and not just Lyme disease, because rarely is it just one bug.
Just Lyme. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets all the attention, but it's never just one bug.
What Michelle and I have found in our unique situations, which you guys have heard a lot about, is that there's a massive stressor typically for us women, or often, I wouldn't say typically, often there is a massive stressor that just like completely crushes us, right? And what we want to do is we want to go and say, well, if I just back that one stressor out, then I can get my quality of life back. But that actually isn't true. That one thing, that massive stressor that crushed you, now is requiring you to go back and deal with all the other stressors that your body was like maintaining homeostasis before because that massive event hadn't come along. And you've got to deal with all of it. So Michelle, her big stressor was mold. Her massive crushing stressor 3.5 years ago was mold. But she couldn't just move out of the house that had mold. Now she's got to go through and she had to do her teeth. She had to go after heavy metals. She had to go after Epstein Barr, lots and lots of different things that they were there before, and her hormones were great and everything seemed fine. But once your body breaks, once you really hit that tipping point, it's not just, to your point about Lyme, you can't just look at it as like, well, I'm just going to try to go after the Lyme. No, there's a lot of things that were already stressing your body out that allowed that massive stressor to crush you that you're going to have to go after. So not necessarily what we want to hear, but it's something that we need to hear so that we actually get well.
It's the truth.
Another question here on Facebook, going back to the breast implants question. Are current implant models as bad for your health as the older ones that could leak?
They all can leak. So whether it's saline or silicone, there's all kinds of chemicals in there. And there's what do they call the recalls and the lawsuits all the time, with that. So, and and how do you know if it's leaking or not, right? And how do you know if there's mold growing in it? How do you know if you're reacting to the chemicals that are in there that are leaching out of it? I mean, it can be a challenging situation. And so there's a lot of self-doubt of like, well, I don't know if it really is or not. And ultimately you're not going to know until you get them out.
Yeah, that's right. Alrighty. Let me pop over here. Pick up another question. If you've got a question for Dr. J, we'll go here for a few more minutes, get some of your questions answered. Let's see. I've got a few questions here about osteoporosis. A lot of women in our community are older. They've been dealing with a lot of health issues, and like as they're getting older, on top of everything else that we're dealing with, osteoporosis is kind of coming into the picture, and they're wanting to know what to do about it. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all, the osteoporosis question, because so many women, especially after, 40, 50, are dealing with that. It's pretty much an epidemic for women.
Yep. Yeah. The number one thing is gut health and absorption of nutrients. And then the second thing I would say is inflammation, and really creating this acidic type environment. So the stressors that we're under, not just the standard American diet, but really the toxins and the pathogens, create an environment where our body essentially, leaches calcium out of the bones to, modulate the pH of the bloodstream. So you want to really focus with gut health, and you want to focus again, it always comes back to the same thing. Dr. J, hey, I've been diagnosed with fill the blank in. What do I do? Yes, are there different tools to modulate depending on the symptoms? Absolutely. But it always comes back to what are the source or sources of your health issues: chronic infection, mold, parasites, toxicity, right? And then of course there's the lifestyle of diet, there's emotional traumas, and physical, traumas as well too. So I don't want to skip over that, but I mean, the four main things in the functional medicine side I talked about.
Yeah. All right. Got a question here from Facebook. I have bile refluxing into my stomach and possibly my esophagus too, as I have hiatus hernia and relaxed lower esophageal sphincter. What can be the reasons?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, go to like a massage therapist, chiropractor, or osteopath, and have them check for hiatal hernia. But any acid reflux type symptoms, parasites. So you want to really focus with opening up the liver bile duct, coffee enemas, the kidney liver detox, different herbs that will help open that up. And then you want to focus with parasites. Doing a mimosa pudica seed challenge is amazing. So that would be taking 2 caps every hour while you're fasting for 4 to 6 hours, and getting a larger amount in there. That can change digestive tract systems, and you can even extend it out longer. You can do it 8 hours, right? 2 caps every hour. You can modify it 1 cap an hour. You can do 1 cap every half hour. It's a little bit more convenient though, 2 caps an hour. Just set a timer.
Mm-hmm. All right, Facebook question here. Are you familiar with LifeVantage products, specifically NRF1 and NRF2 activators? They're supposed to stimulate glutathione naturally and repair at the cellular level to reduce oxidative stress, etc.
Yep, they're a tool in the toolbox. So I don't recommend them clinically with patients, but I know about them.
Alrighty. And let's just talk a little bit about the whole glutathione question. I know there's been a lot of talk in our space over the last couple of years, especially about our mitochondria, and lots of people talking about glutathione. Can you provide some context for us as women to help us kind of hold on to this mitochondria glutathione situation? And there's like these glutathione supplements that are $1 gazillion that we're getting recommendations that we take to supplement our diet. I would love to hear what you have to say about the mitochondria and glutathione.
Yeah, I mean, there's some glutathione supplements out there. I mean, even just taking whey protein, which has an amino acid called cysteine. It's usually the rate limiting. So glutathione's a tripeptide, or basically like 3 amino acids that combine, and cysteine is usually the rate limiting. So if you take something like an N-acetylcysteine, you take whey protein, which some people have dairy allergies, so it's not really a great option. And then there's a lot of products out there. There's liposomal glutathione, which has got a lot of attention, acetylglutathione. A lot of the glutathiones, though, when you take it too, they're kind of like rate limiting, where they'll shut the glutathione pathway off. So I definitely think if you take some type of glutathione product, you want to take things that kind of support not only manufacturing, but recycling in little bits, not like massive amount of just one thing to push glutathione, because you don't really want to shut the pathway off. From a clinical standpoint, though, I really rely on the coffee enemas for increasing glutathione. They will increase glutathione S-transferase 600 to 700%. University of Minnesota found that with coffee enemas. So not even taking a supplement, right? You're, administering, I guess if you want to say procedure at home. But that's kind of what I like to rely on for that. And mitochondria, there's a ton of research behind that, and more stuff coming out. What we're finding clinically is retroviruses damage the mitochondrial membrane, very damaging. And then electromagnetic radiation is a big factor for it. So people that just like touch their feet to the ground, to the earth, can have healthier mitochondria. But a lot of it, is we're electric beings. So just, putting your feet on the ground, you can basically recharge yourself. There's a lot of pieces to it, but if you've got any, maybe you can just do like another minute or two here. My wife is texting, wonder if I'm done yet here. So
yeah, we're definitely wrapping up. So let's just kind of wrap up on that EMF note, because we've been talking here about parasites. We know that the EMF is a thing. It's talked about in lots of interviews. You've had questions about it, talking about grounding, how important it is to go and put your feet out on the ground. And the questions come up in the community. Well, what about parasites being on the ground? And what about what we're spraying on our lawns? How are we kind of navigating that whole space, knowing we need to ground, but our environments are really toxic?
Yeah, well, so I would say don't spray your yard. So that way when your feet are on the ground, you're not on pesticides. And then the other thing is there's parasites everywhere. So the parasites they come from your pets, which is why I say don't sleep with your pets in bed. And don't let your pets lick your face as well too. Don't kiss your pets. But you can get parasites from your significant other in bed. So, I mean, you can get it from when somebody sneezes. They can sneeze pinworm eggs. You can get it from your food supply, your water supply. You can get it from the soil. Parasites are everywhere.
That was disgusting.
Yeah. Well,
sneezing pinworm eggs. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's the truth though, So the reality is you can't be in an environment where there's not parasites, because they're everywhere. So that's where you have to take them down and then just periodically cleanse. And if you try to say, well, I'm going to live in a bubble and I'm never going to be exposed to them, you're just going to stress yourself out more than probably there'll be any good to that. And I don't believe we should be in a bubble. I don't believe we should be completely away from it. However, the issues that happen from parasites is when they get out of control and they get built up at numbers that our bodies just can't handle. So periodic cleansing after a long, what I would say more initial cleanse is really the fix. And then live your life. Make good choices, but live your life. Don't live your life in fear. Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you for rapid fire, taking all of our questions today. I'm sure we'll probably have a million more come. You guys, we have the replay weekend coming up on the 13th and 14th, which is this Saturday and Sunday. If you didn't catch the interview with Dr. Jay, definitely want to put it on your calendars and make sure that you catch it. It was excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you again, Dr. Jay, for spending time with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm glad we got the technology working. So we'll be talking to you soon.
And tell your wife thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. All right. See you later.
All right. We'll see y'all later.